Cool. Let's give everyone like for 2-3 more minutes and then we can start off, Tone.
Okay, I already see cool people. I see Mr. Hodel. Thanks for joining us. I saw a few others. People seem to be entering and then dropping off. I see Stanton. Shout out Stanton. Yeah, see a few people I recognize here. I'm also outdoors by the pool. Decided to just get some sun while we do spaces. I can always go back inside for Wi-Fi, but right now I'm on my SIM card. Dr. Little John, Apex. Thanks for joining us, guys. Red Pill Orange. I recognize that handle as well. Recognizing a lot of Twitter handles. Thanks for joining us, guys. There's probably a lot of competition right now for Twitter Spaces on this topic. So hopefully more and more people will join as we dive into these topics.
100%, Tone. Let's start off. With a little bit of update from you. I'll not ask you what you see in the price action because we all know everyone has been waiting for. We have been meditating for it for a few months now for the ETFs to come through, and there we have it. After some, hacks, some market dumps, some sort of market manipulation, I must say. We have a Bitcoin spot ETF, Tone. Firstly, what are your views on it now? Like, since it's calmed down, it started trading. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I honestly did not expect like a dozen Bitcoin ETFs to start trading today, the day after the approval. I mean, we talked about this in our last spaces with Joe. Joe expected it to start trading soon. I don't think he said immediately. Maybe he said immediately, but I really thought a little bit of time was going to pass. Clearly, absolutely no time passed between them. They got approved yesterday at market close, and today at market open, it all starts trading. So there's a couple of takeaways we have already. First off, the technical analysis is technical analysis. I mean, sure, this entire upswing from, let's say, $30,000 all the way to where we are today, $48,000 since October. A lot of that was driven by the hype of the ETF. But as I've been saying on this space and on the YouTube channel, you have to think of this as a high probability sell the news event. These companies like BlackRock, they're not going out and buying Bitcoin today on the open market. They've already done that. They already have enough Bitcoin to back the ETF. And if they don't have enough Bitcoin to back the ETF, then they're in futures and forward contracts with OTC dealers and miners. This has all already been arranged to buy the Bitcoin over the next X amount of time. And in the meantime, they are just, using their leverage and their credit to back those ETFs. I'm sure there is language in that ETF that the moment, more market cap enters the ETF, they don't have to immediately go out and buy the underlying Bitcoin that second. I mean, there is leeways here. It takes time. They're probably given a multiple month window to properly back that ETF with the underlying Bitcoin. So what we're seeing now is BlackRock is a clear winner when it comes to liquidity. The amount of shares being traded of the BlackRock ETF, I'm not in front of my computer right now, but I think the ticker is IBIT. That ticker is by far the most liquid. The liquidity of that ticker is on par with GBTC liquidity. The bigger the liquidity,
it's around 1 billion. It's about $1 billion worth of shares traded today.
Oh, really? I thought it was only 20 something million. You might be
it's not 1 billion.
No, you might be looking at market cap. I mean, the liquidity on my broker was 25 million shares traded. Yeah.
Let me get the information for you. Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like if you open a broker, on my broker, it was 25 million shares traded today, which is approximately how many shares changed hands of GBTC, which is a huge volume spike for GBTC, but it's on par with the BlackRock ETF, and that number is significantly higher than all other Bitcoin ETFs that launched today. By the way, I don't think all of them launched today. Like some of them don't have any liquidity. Some of them have liquidity of just 200,000 shares being traded. So, uh, yeah, so to me, that's an interesting factor. I think that especially the BlackRock ETF is going to drain a lot of the liquidity from GBTC. Like a lot of those GBTC shares were probably sold in order to convert into the BlackRock ETF. I kind of did that as well a little bit because I wanted to see how these things go. So yes, I did exit some more GBTC today, but I replaced it with the BlackRock ETF because I don't want zero exposure to Bitcoin right now. But the weekly MRI top this week is still a big concern. And we talked about it this morning on the Financial Summit YouTube channel with Matt McGregor, where I was still very, very cautious that this is a sell the news event, potentially a 1 to 4 weekly correction. We can correct down to 40,000 on the price of Bitcoin, maybe even lower. And people will be very, very upset that the Bitcoin ETFs launched and they did not become, multi-millionaires by buying into Bitcoin the day before the ETF launches. So right now, everything is kind of what I've expected. There was a big price rise this morning, probably, made people FOMO in. I did not FOMO in. I just switched, right? Like for everything I sold, I bought. And I still have a lot of cash on the sidelines to re-enter the market either tomorrow or probably next week. This is looking like a sell the news event at the moment.
100%. I mean, the amount of volatility that has come in today and even yesterday after the approval, it does signify it's more or less looking like the Bitcoin has not moved. Like it's still static overall as of now. But other coins have been like Ethereum has been showing massive strength against Bitcoin in the last couple of days. So, Don, I want to basically stick like ETF is our day today. That's what we want to talk about. Now, obviously, we have seen a lot of volume come in, but China has still not participated in the ETF space as of now. What do you expect when China opens tomorrow? Asian markets open. Do you expect more volume to come in?
I don't. I don't really expect it. I mean, China and the United States over the last, I would say, 5 years, they have been very adversarial, where we could have had integrated markets where the Chinese are able to openly trade American markets. But I don't know, American markets are becoming more aggressive to the Chinese, and the Chinese are becoming more aggressive to the US markets. Now, the Chinese are going to look at this Bitcoin ETF and they may or may not want to compete with the Bitcoin ETF. Now, the Chinese clearly messed up when they banned mining and mining came to America. That makes America stronger. Now, you know my geopolitical views on the future of markets. I believe America will go down and China will rise. But it's not a linear relationship. Just like when the price of Bitcoin goes up and up and up, there are pullbacks. Like China getting rid of Bitcoin mining and the United States opening up to Bitcoin mining is one of those pullbacks that strengthens the American job market, the American financial market, and showing the world that America still has some freedom, where China went in the opposite direction when it came to Bitcoin. But that can all completely reverse, where America could start becoming very aggressive towards Bitcoin and the Bitcoin sector, and China opens up to the Bitcoin sector. So we will see. And Russia is sitting there somewhere in between, but Russia doesn't have the kind of robust financial markets that the United States has. This is why Russia is a distant third behind China and America as for world domination. Let's put it that way. I see Joe Carlasare is in the audience. I really hope he's able to participate as a speaker. So let's shoot him over a speaker
I
request.
just accept
Yeah.
this.
So
I accept this.
thanks for joining us, Joe. And but right now, what we're seeing is these Bitcoin ETFs are sucking liquidity out. Now, the interesting thing, what happens to Bitcoin miners? What happens to MicroStrategy? So people have been using MicroStrategy and the Bitcoin mining sector as a proxy for Bitcoin because GBTC is just a basket case. But now that there is real competition for GBTC, and GBTC is going to be in a little bit of trouble because GBTC, while they lowered their expense ratio to 1.5%, BlackRock is 0.25%. So GBTC still has an unreasonably high expense ratio compared to their new competition. So I expect BlackRock's ETF, IBIT, to really start to dominate the space and suck in a lot of that liquidity. And a lot of that liquidity could also be coming from the Bitcoin miner space. I personally entered a spread trade in one of my favorite miners, Bitfarms. It's a spread trade, so it is hedged. And I am bullish on that trade. However, I was watching the price of Bitfarms go down all day. It actually went to a new low versus the last few days. That's when I ended up making the trade. So not that long ago, it filled my spread order. And I can also see this Bitcoin ETF sucking the liquidity out of the Bitcoin mining sector where all of these mining stocks actually go down in price because there's other ways for people to now, invest their money to get exposure to the price of Bitcoin. Oh man, we lost Joe. All right, so Surfer Jim, welcome. Michael, welcome as well. And Bitcoin Motorist, welcome for joining us, guys. I see BitChick as well. Wow, a lot of names that I'm recognizing. That's awesome. Jurgen,
Tone,
welcome as
so
well.
next question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry. Next question. I mean, this is coming from Kathy Wood's interview this morning or afternoon. I'm not sure
I'm sorry,
what time it was for you.
I'm sorry, what interview?
It was an interview from Kathy Wood, the ARK Invest CEO, I think.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, it was regarding the Bitcoin price predictions, and she was very ultra bullish in regards of what they predict the price to be. And they said they expect Bitcoin to be trading at around $500,000 come 2030. That's their base case, and or $1.5 million, which according to them, because SEC has passed these ETFs, is a very, very feasible case according to them. And they are still saying that they're not overestimating it. So that was $1.5 million. Do you think they're overestimating it?
You mean $1.5 million is the price of a single Bitcoin?
One Bitcoin in 2030. That's their price prediction on their website right now.
I mean, sure, if you think the US dollar is going to be relevant by 2030, which I personally think that around 2030, we're not even going to be measuring Bitcoin in US dollars, or we will. And that I don't like these predictions, right? Like, yes, I do believe the price of Bitcoin will be over $1 million, but I'm also not sure if $1 million is going to buy you a Honda in 2030 because I think the United States will completely break apart by 2030. So I have my own views on that situation. Now, Kathy Wood is heavily invested in Bitcoin. Like it's the only thing that can potentially save her entire company because their portfolio and their like investment fund has not been doing well at all. So Kathy Wood is not the most, unbiased person to give an opinion on this matter. Now, I think it's a reasonable view to say Bitcoin has a chance to be $1 million by 2030, even in today's, value of Bitcoin, which means by 2030, it could be tens of millions of dollars if the US dollar completely devalues. And now the reason why I'm outside the US is because I think the US is falling apart. That's my personal opinion. Joe Carlasare has a very opposite opinion of that. He thinks the United States is very, very strong and there's no risk here. I see it a little bit differently. Doesn't mean I'm right, but we will see. So we all know Bitcoin is bullish, right? But putting numbers to it, everybody is just guessing. The TA chart is on a long-term picture. We are entering a bull market. I believe that Bitcoin will go significantly higher over the next year to 2 years. In the meantime, the candle is on an MRI top. So I am not surprised at all that this is a sell the news event that came perfectly on my topping candle right at the 62% Fibonacci line. So the fact that Bitcoin is sitting here under $46,000 after this crazy news spiked us this morning to above $48,000 does not surprise me one bit. This is exactly what we've been talking about on these channels, and the video on the Financial Summit channel this morning. I have not done a video on my channel. I may or may not do that today. Pointed to all of this over the last few weeks as well.
100%. I mean, the candle is looking very, 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 very ugly. It's quite visibly a sell the news event, which is occurring right now. And that's completely fine. I mean, not such a big news on the day of the news. It's okay to have such a thing because people have been buying in anticipation. They want to book their profits, get out of the market. Completely feasible. What matters is the amount of volume that this is going to bring into the market, the amount of acceptance that's going to happen. So for me, it's a very positive thing. But Tone, you have been in Bitcoin for quite a while. You have been hodling Bitcoin. You're been holding it close to your chest. Will you buy ETF? You said it that you have basically bought a little bit after taking some money off, Bitcoin as a whole or mining companies as a whole. But would you sell your Bitcoin for these ETFs?
Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky question. I'm a big proponent of holding your own keys. Remember, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So there are reasons to have a Bitcoin ETF. I hold the Bitcoin ETF for tax advantage reasons. I trade it in my IRAs, my Roth IRAs, in my retirement accounts. But if you have Bitcoin, the best thing you can do with your Bitcoin is hold on to that private key and don't tell anyone you have Bitcoin. I mean, that's really, it's a very complicated thing to do. It's maybe too late it's obviously too late for people like me, but it's not too late for those of you listening. And like the best thing you can do for yourself is don't tell anyone you have any, not even your friends, certainly not the governments. Don't tell anyone you have it. I mean, this is your ultimate lifeline. It's the only unconfiscatable asset, but it's unconfiscatable because no one knows it exists in your possession. That's the ultimate use case of Bitcoin. So if you're not a public person in the Bitcoin domain, my best advice to you, don't become one. It only brings an unreasonable amount of risk. And I'm willing to deal with those risks, and I have dealt with those risks because they have reared their ugly heads. But some of the best advice I can give people is no. If you have Bitcoin stashed away, keep it stashed away and don't tell anybody you have it. That's the best advice I can give you.
Also, Tone, I mean, did you get time to go through the fees and fee structure of most of these ETFs? Because I was looking at it and it was looking as if there's a guy standing in two windows in Amsterdam, and one puts up a board, says this much, the other one says, no, no, I'm cheaper. Do you think this was more or less becoming like a marketing war between these companies, and now the fees are so less that they'll not be profitable?
Uh, I'm in the sun here, so I wasn't sure if I was muted or unmuted. Look, there's obviously going to be competition, and the fees are small, but the fees are still high. Look, 1/4% on billions of dollars is still a lot of money. And you have to realize that these are professional companies. They know how to manage an ETF. They have the staff. Yes, and they're gonna have another company holding Bitcoin in custody, like Coinbase custody and some of the others. I think Fidelity is taking on custody themselves, but they know how to do custody. Fidelity's been doing Bitcoin custody for a long time for their clients, probably about 4 or 5 years now. Fidelity has been involved in the world of Bitcoin. So the costs of these companies to manage another ETF are very, very marginal. So they're going to make money no matter what. Of course, their goal is to make the maximum amount of money. So BlackRock, holding billions of dollars in Bitcoin underlying market cap, you take 1/4% of that a year, and that adds up to quite a bit. And yes, they're going to compete with each other, and each one of them is going to, put more Bitcoin into like a cold storage area, and the liquidity on Bitcoin spot exchanges is going to drop. But the ultimate question is, where is Bitcoin's price discovery? The price discovery of these ETFs is dependent on the price discovery of Bitcoin. So what is the ultimate measure of Bitcoin's price discovery? For example, in the case of the gold ETF, let's say GLD, the ultimate price discovery is the gold CME future. That's the ticker GC1, is the ultimate price, the nearest expiry futures contract, the one that every gold bug in the world claims to be perpetually manipulated. Okay, that is the true price discovery of gold, not the spot price of gold. It's the future price of gold. Okay, that's going to expire in about 2 to 3 weeks, and that has the most liquidity, and that drives the price of gold. The spot price of gold kind of moves off of that price. In Bitcoin, it's a little tricky. I personally believe that the spot price of Bitcoin, the ultimate driver of the overall price of Bitcoin is dependent on the spot exchanges, like a Kraken, like a Coinbase. These are the big boys, the big ones where people trade spot Bitcoin. Even if the volume of the futures is higher, the futures volume of Bitcoin is mostly driven by exchanges that are not properly regulated or not properly approved by the US regulators. And now we're back to the regulators again. So exchanges like, BitMEX and Bybit and BitGet is a new one. So these futures exchanges, yes, they have mass volume. They're also not American based. There's also questions whether that volume is real or fake. And even if that volume is real and that volume is higher than the spot Bitcoin markets, I still think that the driver is the spot Bitcoin market, because over there, Bitcoin actually changes hands. While in the futures market, you're using your Bitcoin as leverage. And yes, you can withdraw the Bitcoin, but that Bitcoin is driven by leverage. Now, can a craziness in the futures market affect the spot market? Sure, it can. But I think crazy things in the spot market will alter the futures market more and be more like the changes in the spot market trading will affect futures more than the futures markets affect the spot markets. So now we're once again back to the Bitcoin ecosystem determining the price of Bitcoin. That may not be the case 3 to 4 years from now, right? The New York Stock Exchange might be the ultimate exchange for Bitcoin changing hands, and not a company like Kraken or Coinbase. So we don't know where the future holds. I personally hope that a company like Kraken would buy the New York Stock Exchange as opposed to the other way around. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you. That was great insight. Moving on to Tone. I know you don't. You might, but you don't like to talk about them. But now Bitcoin ETF is out of the way. We are seeing a rotation happening where we are seeing Ethereum outperform in the last couple of days Bitcoin. Do you think this is more of an anticipation of Ethereum ETF, which is now due in sometime in May? Do you think that the market or the traders in normal circumstances or in these circumstances are switching attention towards Ethereum as a new trade to look for in the couple of months coming up?
Maybe, but I think it's more of the case where Bitcoin was the hyped asset. Everyone was anticipating a Bitcoin ETF. Every altcoin trader wanted to take advantage of the final month, weeks, days of the price of Bitcoin rising into the announcement of the Bitcoin ETF. Yes, Ethereum has gone up in the last few days, but there is a very common quote in the crypto space called "When in doubt, zoom out." And if you zoom out, you will see that people have been exiting Ethereum for weeks, if not months. And now that the hype of Bitcoin is over and people that exited Ethereum for Bitcoin have gotten their gains out of Bitcoin, they now look at it the other way, saying, hey, it's a sell the news event. So there's no reason to keep holding Bitcoin because the announcement has come and gone. It's time to get back into the asset I was holding before. So you're seeing this, volume coming in into the altcoins because it exited altcoins because Bitcoin was just a better short-term speculative play. And it's not even that they think the altcoins are going to go higher. It's just that they're probably just selling Bitcoin on the sell the news event, and they probably didn't even want to hold Bitcoin to begin with. Most of the altcoin people don't like Bitcoin. They don't hold Bitcoin positions. So they're just going back to what they were doing after, probably making a really good bet on Bitcoin speculation going into the day of the announcement.
Very well said. I mean, totally. I literally just opened the ETH BTC chart, and I can see what you're trying to get to. The way the ETH BTC pair has been driving down slowly in anticipation of this, and that looks very, very clear now. So, Tone, going a little bit more. I mean, not too much into Bitcoin price action or Bitcoin. What's going to happen. Yes, it's a sell the news event, but where do you see Bitcoin, even if it is a sell the news event? What do you expect in the coming months before halving? Because we right now just got a demand shock. In a way, it's a demand shock because suddenly this demand for spot Bitcoin would be increased because of all these ETFs. Now halving is going to bring the supply shock part of it, which basically kind of, we can say, equalizes the equation, but it's not equalizing. It's basically making sure that now there is more demand, less supply, so more, we are disjointed. What are you expecting, like, after you have seen this whole thing play out? What are you expecting in the coming months after halving for price to do?
Well, after the halving, I'm certainly expecting the price of Bitcoin to keep rising. I think that's a simpler answer. Of course, I still have months away until the halving to change my mind. But as of right now, I'm expecting the price to rise after the halving, like it always has in its prior three halvings, where the price goes up significantly after the halving. Now, what am I expecting before the halving is the more interesting question. And right now, I am still looking at a pullback until I see uh, daily closes above $47,000. As long as we are closing daily candles below $47,000, I'm anticipating a bit of a pullback. It's probably going to be choppy markets. There'll probably be another hype train in a couple of weeks from now, taking us to a nice high in the 50s. And after that, one more pullback before the halving. I'm expecting the markets to be kind of choppy on a slow upwards trend, and then that trend goes higher after the halving. Now, the other big question is, what is the probability of us entering a serious pullback, one that can take Bitcoin down below $35,000, somewhere between 30 and 35,000? I think the chances of that are actually pretty low. It would be nice to buy an ultimate dip like that, but I am a bit more bullish than that at the moment. But let's see how today and tomorrow go, and I'll have a better thought process on what kind of pullback we're dealing with right now.
That's completely cool. Let me know what you think after the pullback in our next spaces. I'll be looking forward to your whole analysis during that. So, Tone, let's move away from Bitcoin a little bit. I mean, I think for the last spaces that we had, it was more in depth about ETFs. Now ETFs are approved. We need to drill down a little bit more and get our guest speakers that we will have during the weekend spaces, most likely, where we will drill down a lot more into what have they read through the prospectus, which one do they think is the best, and a lot more information will be there to digest. It's just been a day, so it's still very, very early for us. But I want to ask you about CPI. CPI came in hot. Core CPI inflation fell to 3.9%, above expectation, which was around 3.8%. December CPI inflation rates rose to 3.4%, above expectations again of 3.2%. So this was the third consecutive month with inflation above 3%. And it's the first jump since September. What do you think, Tone? Can the Fed really pivot from here? Do you think they are in a state to pivot?
I don't think so. I mean, when we say inflation came in over expectation, that means that inflation came in hot. Inflation came in higher than the market anticipated. And if the inflation is still running at between 3 and 4%, the Fed will need to maintain its high interest rates to continue to fight inflation. Remember, the goal of the Fed is to bring inflation down to 2%, and inflation is being sticky above 3%. So there's absolutely no reason for the Fed to lower the rate. So I do not expect the rate to be lowered. The interest rate will stay kind of high. And we can also see that this does not affect the stock market whatsoever. The stock markets are back to a new all-time high, as we've been saying, or I've been saying, for years.
Pretty clearly on many of our spaces. So guys, if you haven't yet visited, please do visit the Financial Summits YouTube channel. We have just started doing some live content with the other hosts and other speakers, traders, people who understand the markets much better than maybe I do, and it's a very good place to learn. Tone went live with the Alpha Numerics. It's a really good show, so please do visit that. Also, in our previous spaces, like all our spaces that we do are live on there. So if you want to learn and see how we do our spaces, and all the data is available there for you to go through again and understand how Tone and other speakers have been dissecting the markets over the course of the last 1 year and telling you exactly what's going to happen when it's going to happen. Also, visit our website, financialsummit.com, thefinancialsummit.com, my bad. We basically host luxurious events where for traders, family offices, hedge funds, businesses, where people gather for a week and spend time, discuss, and understand what the markets are. Also, there are ideas exchanged. So the next event is going to be held in Maldives in April 2025, Tone, if I'm not wrong.
We're shooting for March 2025, but still negotiating with the hotel. We'll get there.
We will get there. But yes, guys, there will be some sort of discounts if you are able to get your space early. So I'm just letting you know. Tone doesn't know about it, but I'm telling you, there will be some discounts. So if you get your space early, you might get a good bounty there. So Tone, moving on. I don't know if you saw the news. Microsoft has now taken over Apple as the most, what do you call it? What's the right word? Most largest public company in the world. So what have they been doing right? How did this change? Like, they are proper competitors in terms of what they produce, what they want to offer. And what do you think about Microsoft's achievement with this?
Man, so I'm not a huge fan of either operating system. I'm really not a fan of Apple, and I'm really not a fan of Windows either. But between the two evils, I am a Microsoft user, not an Apple user. Uh, Mostly, I'm using Android. So, I mean, look, it's just the stock. I mean, Apple, over the last few years, Apple has had their issues, and they haven't innovated in quite a while. Microsoft is probably making better deals on the margins. They're taking over more useful new tech companies, integrating that through their system. And other than that, I don't really have the details. I'm not that much of a fundamental analyst in either one of these companies. So I don't really have a good answer as to why Microsoft took over Apple, but their share price is sure as hell doing better. I want to say that's due to TA, but it's not. 80-90% of the reason a stock gets bought is still fundamental analysis, not technical analysis. But clearly, if Microsoft just became the bigger company, then they are doing a better job than Apple with what products they're offering to people.
There's just something coming through, Tone. Vanguard is banning all Bitcoin ETFs from their platform. This is according to senior ETF analyst from Bloomberg. I literally just got this on my screen.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
I'm trying to.
So I actually knew that. Like, one of my good friends from college was messaging me this morning because he trades through Vanguard in his retirement accounts, and he couldn't buy the Bitcoin ETFs, and he's like, "What the hell is going on?" And clearly, they had to make an announcement because people were trying to purchase the tickers, and Vanguard is not letting them purchase those tickers. But doesn't Vanguard have one of the ETFs, or they don't? I'm not sure. I don't have the list in front
No,
of
I
me.
don't think so. No, no, Vanguard does not have any ETF stone. So the ones that we have, yeah, Vanguard does not have any. No, Fidelity
I don't
has
know.
one.
Vanguard is being stupid. Like they were probably not prepared. Maybe they didn't think it was gonna pass. Maybe they want to compete. I don't know what they're doing, but they're gonna lose customers. That's for damn sure.
Okay. Also, the total spot Bitcoin ETF volume just surpassed $3 billion for day one. That was
Well,
the total.
no, but I don't think that's like that. That might be market cap volume, right? That might be the number of shares traded times the
Oh,
value of those
yes.
shares.
Yes, that would be that. Yes.
Right. I was just going by the number of shares traded, right? And the number of shares
I'll
that
try.
change hands is approximately the same for GBTC uh, uh, and for BlackRock ETF. Now the BlackRock ETF is significantly cheaper. BlackRock ETF is in the mid 20s, while GBTC is about 40. So yes, the market cap weighted volume will be way higher for GBTC, but I'm very, very impressed with how much volume the BlackRock ETF did. I think within 3 months, it will probably surpass GBTC, and it's not even going to be close.
Tone, we have Joe here. Joe, welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. I'm about to get in the workout in a little bit here, but wanted to say hi. Hope everyone's enjoying the price action today. Definitely a lot of fun, exciting. One thing I want to just point out when you're looking at this market cap stuff, you really need to look at it from a net basis of new money into the space. Okay, so you're talking about just the raw, purchases and volume. The key thing is, are the ETFs sucking money from other Bitcoin proxies? For example, the miners, MSTR, etc. And like you can look at MSTR on the day. MSTR's, it's down quite a bit from the high it put in on the 2nd of January. It's down almost 26% from the January 2nd high. Same thing with some of the miners. I mean, Mara's, it's down considerably today. Let me just look at like hot, same thing. They're all, basically taking out lows. To me, like, you've got people deciding we want to rather hold spot vehicles than we want to hold, the actual, these proxy bets. So that's key.
Right. I
Yeah.
did mention that earlier. I don't know if you were on at the time, but I said exactly the same thing. And we will need a couple of more weeks to for all that dust to settle.
Yeah, and just keep in mind that there's these vehicles being there. It's not especially big money. In my view and experience, like big money doesn't just go market buy and smash it, right? Like they will slowly and steadily allocate over time. They want to look at the vehicles, they want to look at the flows, they want to assess which one they're going to put capital behind. This I know that we move so fast on these. Retail moves real fast with Bitcoin, but bigger institutions don't. So don't read too much into 24 hours of price action on the ETFs. I don't think it's particularly meaningful.
Oh, 100%. It's just that for me, how I was looking at it is the interest that people, even if it is retail, the interest that people are showing. Like, I'll be very honest with you. Today, I received messages from my friends who I haven't talked to in last, I think, couple of months at least, and they were messaging me, which ETF should I buy? And I'm like, why should I tell you? You should do your own research. So it was the interest from these people who are not part of the industry or not exposed to the risk associated with keeping Bitcoin as a spot, suddenly asking you which ETF to buy. So have you guys had any such queries or people approaching you or anything as such?
Oh yeah, I definitely have. And my answer was the cheapest and the most liquid. Those are your best options. And when they're one and the same, that decision should be easy.
Yeah, I
And oh,
agree.
sorry. Let me define cheapest. Cheapest doesn't mean the cheapest price that you're paying for a share. Cheapest means cheapest expense ratio.
Yeah. So, and that's a little bit confusing too, because what do you mean by cheapest? Because there are some of the ETFs that are doing teaser fees where they are at 0% for the first 12 months. Later, they will pivot to a higher fee structure. So there's all these sort of teaser rates to try to get money in flows, because the ETFs know that if they don't get in the top 5 or 6, probably at the worst, within 6 months, they're probably not going to be around in a year.
Yeah, I'm not sure how these things actually liquidate, right? Like, are they like shit coins? They're gonna stick around forever with almost no volume, or like, do they
No,
actually
no,
delist?
no. So if you ever bought ETFs that go the way of the dodo, what the brokerage houses do is they typically will find a companion or comparison ETF, because there's so many freaking ETFs. What they do, there was like a 3D printing ETF that I think my father owned or something. It basically just couldn't survive. It didn't have the flows. So what they do is they basically will liquidate it, and they'll say, "Do you want to convert to a similar ETF? Here's a similar ETF that we've identified, and would you want us to purchase the equivalent amount of those shares by a certain date before it shuts down, or do you want it just to go to cash?" And you usually have to select. Now, the problem with that, just so you know, is that if you pick the wrong ETF and either it gets converted to another ETF or it goes to cash, for example, if the Franklin Templeton does not survive because it doesn't get the flows, then that's a taxable event. So if Bitcoin's, above 100K in a year and some of these things are going under, you're going to have to pay taxes on that, which, depending on the account you're in, if it's a non-tax preferred account like an IRA, that's a big deal. So just choose carefully.
Right,
So what
especially
if
if it's going bust in like just before the year is up, and now you're going into income taxes instead of capital gains taxes just because you couldn't hold out a few more weeks. Hey
Joe, if
guys.
you're trying to speak, you're on mute.
Oh no, I'm not trying to speak.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. My question was, what if they get liquidated and I say, oh, I want my Bitcoin?
What do you mean? Like a user buying the ticker and then somehow wants the underlying Bitcoin that was
Yeah, because
bought
they
by
say, right,
BlackRock? That ain't happening.
that ain't happening. Oh my God. So I'm never buying ETF then, Tone. I want my Bitcoin. Uh, cool. Joe, anything else from which you want to add from your research?
Is Tone talking?
Joe, you there?
Tone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there
Oh,
anything that you
okay.
want to
Sorry, I
add
couldn't hear
in
anything
regards
talking.
of anything you want to add in regards of your research into the prospectus or your initial research that you have seen from these ETFs?
I don't hear Joe.
Nor do I.
I'm here now. I couldn't. Was there someone else talking besides you,
No,
Tone?
I was
No, it's
asking
just
you a question. Can
it's
you hear
just
me?
us.
Okay. So listen. I think that right now there's a lot of jockeying for position, and I think GBTC is one of these entities that is contributing to some of the selling because of their effort to try to arb out the discount. You got to remember, the way they close that discount is by selling Bitcoin. So I'm looking at some data here that suggests that that's part of what's driving some of the price action.
So eventually GBTC is gonna stop selling the Bitcoin and there'll be less selling pressure on the market.
Yes.
That's an
Yeah.
interesting observation. It makes sense, a lot of sense. But Joe, back to the comment, right? A lot of people somehow believe that if they buy into one of these spot Bitcoin ETFs and the underlying entity, whether it's BlackRock, whether it's Valkyrie, buy Bitcoin on the open market to back the ETF, that somehow the end speculator, the end investor in the ticker of the ETF can request the underlying Bitcoin. And I just want to make clear that's not how it works. That's not going to happen.
No. Yeah. At least not anytime soon, right? You need an effective rule change. So just to let you know the process, The 19.4 is like basically when you apply for that, you have to set forth the procedure. And there was a huge focus by the SEC from all the reporting about cash creates, meaning cash creates and redeemables in cash. So, you're not going to have a situation in the near term unless the SEC changes its rules that you could take physical custody of that Bitcoin. They want cash in, cash out. So what that means is the structure has to sell Bitcoin when the Bitcoin's going down. They have to buy it when they want to create more shares. They can't, unlike GBTC. You got to remember, GBTC, you used to be able to, investors, if you had 100 Bitcoin, wanted the equivalent of shares and locked up shares of GBTC, you could just convey that Bitcoin directly to GBTC. And people did that and took advantage of that for some time. They rejected that explicitly.
Right, and GBTC did not have the ability to sell the Bitcoin on the open market, and that's why the discount got so far out of control. But I want to remind people once again that had GBTC been able to sell Bitcoin on the open market to maintain the Bitcoin peg, the discount would have never gotten to 50%, but the overall price of Bitcoin would have been significantly lower because they would have been selling a lot of Bitcoin on the open market, especially during the whole FTX debacle. So the price of Bitcoin could have easily fallen below $10,000 instead of bottoming out at 15,000 had GBTC been a spot ETF. So, it's a double-edged sword here by GBTC not being able to sell a significant portion of their 600,000 Bitcoin. That was the reason why the discount went so low, but the price of Bitcoin never fell below 15K. That's something else to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, but that works in both ways, right? Because
Correct.
GBTC was also at a significant premium for points, and that should never happen. Had there been an ETF structure, what would have occurred is you probably wouldn't have had some of the spikes you saw in 2017, for example, right? Because what would have, or sort of some of the price action, because what would have occurred rather than trading at some absurd premium, you would have had more buy side pressure to the upside, right? That's the whole point of a premium. That they don't actually, the shares are trading better than.
But Joe cut out. Maybe he got a phone call. Yeah, and
So
Joe's
there would have been more,
correct, right?
yeah. Sorry, I had a phone call. I was just saying there would have been more buy
Yeah,
side
figured.
support, and that premium that people were paying, it would have actually helped support the price above 15,000 when it was at that absurd premium in December of 2017.
That is correct. Yeah, I'm with Joe on that as well. Back when that premium went out of control in 2017, the underlying price of Bitcoin could have topped out closer to 30 or 40,000 instead of 19,000.
So the way I think about it is this, okay? When you have a closed-end trust, you effectively force the sponsor to become somewhat of a market timer. And unfortunately for the Bitcoin market, the GBTC was piling into additional buys when the bull market was getting pretty long in the tooth in 2021. You got to remember, they were buying Bitcoin, well above 40, 50K into the late parts of 2021. And obviously, we know how that worked out.
Wow, this was the. Thank you both. I mean, it's already too
Well,
late in
I got a question for Joe before we go. Hey, Joe, what are
Yeah,
your thoughts on
100%.
the CPI and the Fed?
I think that the economy continues to surprise people, when you have inflation that's picking back up, that is not an indication of significant deceleration. That's the whole point. Like, there's still a relatively hot economy, and I think the key thing for the Fed, and they have it within their models, is that they have basically said they've reached the terminal rate. They're going to stick here. And I think that the cuts are totally misguided. I don't think they'll be cutting unless you get those numbers down. But I think they're basically telling the market at this point that we're happy with it where it's at. We're going to stick it at these levels. We're going to continue to do QT, which I expect them to do as they have. And I think that there's nothing on the horizon that's going to make them change that in the near term. You'll still see little pockets of deceleration. People call this term rolling recession, I think. But if that's all that's occurring, that's a huge win. And then you have to add on to the additional factor that Janet Yellen by basically March is going to successfully rebuild the TGA, which means that the additional bond issuance is not going to have as much of an influence on on rates. It's not going to push them up higher. So all in all, I mean, I think you're seeing the early signs of reacceleration across the economy, and that tends to be my base case moving forward for the next 6 to 12 months.
All right, so you're bullish on the economy and you're bullish on the stock market as well, I'm assuming. So we are on the same page. And last question before we do have to end this space. 1 week from now, do you expect Bitcoin to be over 50,000 or below current price?
I do expect it to be higher. I think that people are overestimating the bigger players' ability to move very quickly. I think this is going to be a slow burn for a while. I think it's going to move us up higher. I think it was typical and expected to get sort of a sell-off here because that's just how markets work. You need to. There's so much anticipation for this, and once things quiet down, I don't think you're going into some negative spiral on Bitcoin. I don't think we're going back to 30K or anything like that. In my view, I think Bitcoin's higher a month from now. I think it's higher 6 months from now. I do not expect, especially because of these ETF structures and the options that are coming to market, quick parabolic moves in Bitcoin. I think this Bitcoin bull run is going to be very different. It's already been sort of different than prior runs. You haven't seen the 20, 30% pullbacks that were more typical. And that is consistent with a maturing asset, right? You see it function a lot more closer to the SPY, the S&P 500, than perhaps its previous price action history. So I expect a slow, steady climb upward for the next 6 months at least.
All right. No, that sounds great. I had another super short question, but it just left my head. All right. You guys want to close us out? I guess that's a good way to end it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I see Brad Mills, shout out. David De Silva, shout out. Run, Ride, Fly, shout out as well. Florida Bitcoin. Wow, recognizing so many names. Gen X, shout out.
Joe, go on.
Go ahead.
Because I have to ask you. It's not a markets question, but I guess it could have an influence on the market. What is your prediction for the Iowa caucuses on Monday?
I'm sorry, for what?
The Iowa caucuses. The presidential race. I have no idea. I have just been too busy with this. Can you just give me the highlights on that one? Sure. So for those that are not familiar, the Iowa caucuses are the first step in the presidential nominating process. You will have obviously the closely followed GOP caucuses, which widely expected former President Trump will dominate, win a huge amount of the votes. There was a debate yesterday where the two, ones that are far removed from the front runner, Nikki Haley and DeSantis, are throwing barbs at each other, trying to desperately get, clamoring for support. But the way the nominating process works is that if you win several of the key states, you build so much momentum that it basically is a lock. And like I said, former President Trump is widely expected to dominate on Monday, and I'm interested to see what kind of reaction the markets take to that. It'll be followed, in a few weeks there by New Hampshire, and then on, a few weeks later into some of the other big states in Super Tuesday. But I can tell you, if Trump is able to sweep the first several nominating contests, it's going to be, in my view, damn near impossible for him not to win the nomination.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Vivek Ramaswamy is getting a little bit of, nice action these days. But as long as Nikki Haley is off those ballots, that's great. I don't have a problem with DeSantis, but I don't think he's gonna be at the end. Look, it's gonna be Trump. I just think Trump is not gonna is gonna be in jail or worse by the time the actual election comes around. I'm more interested who the Democrats put out than what the Republicans, what's going to happen with the Republicans. I'm not guessing on this one. I'm going to wait and see So that's happening Monday. So I'll keep an eye on that and see who comes out on top. No, but that's good to know. Thanks for the reminder, man. I'll keep it in mind. Though I am looking for some good football this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only reason I'm focused on it is because I think the market is not at all. I think it's not at all estimating a Trump win in November of this year. I think the market has not priced that in at all. And folks know if there's one thing Donald Trump cares about as a proxy of the economy, it's the stock market. And we all saw what happened with the stock market after he won in the previous time. So anyway, just my thoughts.
All right,
Thank you very
sounds
much,
good.
Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tone, for your insight. Thank you for your time. Guys, we will be trying to be doing another space during the weekend. Most likely it will happen if only I'm not busy. If I am free, as I'm on vacation, I will try to take out time, Tone, I promise you. But if not, then on Monday. But we will have a space. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. The space will be uploaded on YouTube. So if you have missed anything from the beginning, you can just listen to it again by tomorrow. It will be up. That's it for today. Take care, Tone. Take care, Joe. See you soon.
Thanks for hosting, guys.